you have all this anxiety about what you've done. You think it's the worst thing on earth. And then when you share it, people start laughing because they're like, that's it. And it's amazing how that weight falls off your shoulder. It's just like, oh my God, like you, number one, you found your tribe.
Yes.
But number two, it's just like, you don't have to carry it anymore.
But what is your favorite thing about sobriety?
I no longer am scared when a cop's behind me. There's something about the fact that knowing that I'm always capable of showing up.
Yeah.
And I love that.
A lot of peace of mind with that. It's a really good feeling. That's awesome. Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, these stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. Hey, sober family and our entire listening community. We have a great show in store for you today. Our guest is Jason Fotter, and we went to school, I don't even want to say how many years ago, but it's been many moons ago. And how long?
It's been in the 90s.
Oh, God. His tagline is so funny because it's just a guy in recovery, which I love because that's humility, you know, and I love that. So I'll brag on him a little bit, though. He makes his living as a creative director. He's also just, a friend, a guy in recovery, like somebody you want to talk to and get to know. And I respect and admire him as, a dad, a husband, a person, a man in recovery. And he's very smart and witty, obviously, but also, he wants to help other people and share his story. And,
Yes.
He's got an intensity to his personality that I totally relate to and that I absolutely love. And he's going to be a really fun interview. So I'm so grateful that you said yes. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Jason.
Hello, everybody.
Such a good radio voice. Literally sound like a DJ.
Yeah, I always say I've got a face for radio, so.
You definitely have a voice for radio. It's so funny because when I knew you, we were still kids. And so I don't know that I've ever actually heard your man voice.
Yeah, I was still developing my man voice the last time I saw you.
So let's start with an icebreaker, which is if you were a professional wrestler, what would your character name be? And what would your walkout song be?
I would say, I've been doing some thinking about this. I'm a big comic book dork. I would probably my name would be Anonymous. And then I think I would switch up my song all the time. Like I would really want to just screw with people. So I'd probably start out with something like Yanni or Celine Dion, like my heart will go on. Like, just completely like, why is he playing this? And then I would switch it up constantly.
They would see you and hear the music.
Kenny G.
Or what?
Kenny G.
I love that. That's pretty, that sounds exactly like you. That's exactly what a creative person would do. And I think.
And I like screwing with people.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
Yes.
So when did you get sober? Let's just start with an easy one.
December 2nd, 2016.
And this is such a loaded question. Every time I ask it, it's hard. It's hard to distill it down. But can you take me back or take us back through kind of what it was like for you and your active addiction? I always like to hear if it was just out of the gate, like, bat out of hell, or if it was a gradual thing, and, sort of how you arrived at that point where you were either willing or beaten into submission to get sober.
Yeah, I want to say I took my first drink. I remember my dad gave me a sip of, it was a Michelob Dark. I think I was like 10 or 11. And I just remember, I can still, just talking about it, like I can still smell it. In high school, I would be kind of the weekend guy. I got a job as a bar back. I remember Garfield's and Lake Jackson. And
wow.
That kind of introduced me to the scene. And I just remember it was just, I felt like I was part of a community, being behind a bar and actually just serving people drinks. And what happened for me was, like, during the college years and kind of the high school years, I would drink and I thought it would give me that liquid courage. It would make me a little more easygoing. I thought it was more funny. I thought it was more witty. But then during the college years, it started to get a little more intense. I started blacking out a lot more. Then during my 30s, I kept going, like, at least I'm not drinking every day. And then it would be like, then I was drinking every day. And then it would be, at least I'm not in the morning. At least I'm not drinking during work. And then that happened. And I want to say during my 30s, I was just like, I knew I had a problem. And I kept kind of putting it out there to people. Like, I remember a couple times when I was like getting a physical, and I'd be like, I'd mention my drinking or my stomach hurting or something like that. And I'm like, do I need to quit drinking? And the doctor would be like, no, I don't, you're fine. And I was like kind of inside screaming, like going like, come on, somebody, like I can't do it on my own. I need someone to jump in and tell me to stop. And so it never happened. Typically, going forward, what would happen was something I'd like get in a fight with my first wife, and then I'd stop. Then something I'd do great at work, and then I'd start drinking again. And there would always be kind of a pause, and then I would start up again. And then during the end, I was constantly in maintenance mode. Like, I was drinking to get rid of the withdrawals, the DTs, the constant sweating. I was just always in maintenance. And I want to say it was like I was in quicksand. It was just, I remember a couple times it'd be like 10 o'clock at night, and I would be like in tears going into the bar. I did not want to go in, but I had to.
Yeah.
It was like it was a constant battle between my head and my body, where it was just my body needed it. My head knew I didn't, or it was killing me. Because I was starting when I reached 40, I was really, really starting to feel the effects. Like in my toes, I was starting to get like really tingly sensations, and then my skin was just hurt. Like if my shirt touched my chest, like it hurt. So I can only imagine that was like the acid but yeah, it was just hell. Like I kept going to sleep, hoping I wouldn't wake up, and I just kept waking up. And a lot of my drinking had it as I say in meetings, I'm a cliche. I'm three-quarters Irish. I'm a writer and an alcoholic, and I have depression and anxiety. And the thing with drinking was it depression kind of gave me this cloud in my head, and it just like it was really hard to find words. And drinking kind of got rid of that cloud, so it was this vicious circle. And I noticed the difference between like my head wanting to drink and my body felt sick, or vice versa. My body felt great, but my head was like, no, you don't need a drink. But it was just constantly battling each other. Yeah, it was. There's just definitely like all these like kind of like vignettes in my head where I'm like thinking like there's this one time where it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm in my car and I just start screaming because I was just like I just need to escape this madness, and I just didn't know how. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
I mean, it's so relatable and it's so weird because people who haven't experienced that firsthand, it just sounds bizarre because, and to a lot of people, it looks like you're having fun or you're partying or this and that.
Yeah,
But a lot of people in the rooms, and we hear it all the time, like at the end, they were at home drinking alone, or it turns into this
hmm,
whole other thing. And then you need so much just to maintain, just to not get sick, basically.
yeah,
And
totally, totally.
you just want to stop, but you can't. And it's like, it makes no sense. It is so illogical. And I think that's why it's so confusing, especially if you consider yourself a smart person, a pragmatic person.
Yes,
It's just a mind fuck, man. And sorry for
yeah.
my F bomb, but you know what
I'm offended.
I'm saying. So
No, no. And I think the thing too that happens is just like I know what happened for me was the fact that like I couldn't turn my head off. And when you reach that stage of like addiction, doesn't matter how much you drink. Like my body is practically shutting down from all the alcohol and like the damage I'm doing to it. But inside my head, my cognition, it's still awake. And
yeah,
it doesn't matter how many shots I do, it's still there and it just won't turn off. So it's like your body, like you're slurring your words, but you still can see and think, but it's just not, you think you're speaking clearly, but you're not because your body is completely, shit faced, but your head's still going 100%.
and you're wanting to be in oblivion, right, to where you can turn
Yes,
it
totally.
off, right, or at least
Yeah.
turn down the volume, but it won't. It's relentless, and it's just you
Yeah.
just put it so well because it took me back to like that exact same experience that I was having. And so, did you just one day say, I'm done? I just got it, or did something happen? I mean, what was the impetus? What was the thing?
I, it was like my first marriage. We were trying to see if we can make it work out. I was still drinking. She didn't know that I was. I had just left my first treatment center, and I she went out of town, and I was watching my son, who was just a baby. Long story short, I put him down for a nap, and I went to a bar. And then when I came back, he was crying. And I just passed out. And then she got back from her trip and sees me passed out, baby's crying, and I'm like, oh my god, what have I done?
Yeah,
And that's when I checked in. I was just like, I talk about like your life is out of control. Like, and I knew it. Like I cannot physically stop drinking. And I'm beating myself up because I just got out of a treatment facility and I'm like, I need to go back. I need help.
yeah,
Thank God my son was fine, but the amount of guilt that I still carry for that is
yeah.
I've tried to forgive myself. I will completely one day, but it's like I can't believe I did that. But yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that's not easy to talk about. And the parent
Yeah.
guilt part is the promises say we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. But I for most things,
Yeah.
that's true for me. But the mom guilt, it still hangs on. And, knowing that I drove my child around when I was,
Yeah.
under the influence, just stuff like that. You look back at those moments and you're like, I love her so much. How could I ever have done that? But, like you say, you have to forgive yourself. You have to move on. I have to look at the relationship I have with her today, not those things.
Yes. Yes.
Every now and then, though, when my mind wants to play with me, it'll be like, wow, you're a really terrible person. And
and for me, where I go with that is just like, I needed that. That was part of my journey. I needed that to get where I am today.
Absolutely. Yeah, because doing damage to ourselves was never going to be enough, or not for me anyway. That was never going to be enough. I was like, yeah, fine, whatever. But when you see yourself, hurting other people or putting other people, especially your child, it's like, oh my God, this is worse than I thought,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I was hoping I would die. Like, that's what I was kind of aiming for, but it was just taking too long. And that was the problem. But the second I realized, wow, that could have been really bad. Something really bad could have happened to my son. I'm like, okay, I can't let that happen again.
So how have your relationships changed in recovery? Whether it's with your son, with your partner, family, work, whatever you want to talk about. But what does it look like? How has that changed in your life?
I was just thinking it'd be funny if I'm like, well, it hasn't changed at all.
Exactly the same.
Like, I still suck with people. The biggest thing that I am proud to say that I'm reliable. Like, if I say something, if I'm going to do something, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I like being able to know that people can count on me. To me, that's the most important thing, because just the idea of knowing that I was unpredictable and unreliable, like, you never knew if I was going to show up, or if I was going to show up drunk, or would I be wearing pants, like, that could very well be a concern. It's just like, is he going to wear both shoes today? I don't know. And knowing that I'm going to wear both correct shoes is fantastic.
And pants. And you're going to be sober and be where you say you're going to be. Yeah. I remember toward the end of my drinking and using, there was a time when it was a disappointment or a betrayal or whatever to not show up when I said I was going to. And toward the end, people were relieved. Like, thank God. Thank God she didn't come to this party or this engagement dinner, or, whatever it was, because that was worse. My absence was actually preferred there at the end. And, but when you come to and you realize, like, oh, wow, I missed that birthday party because, I intended to go, and then I started day drinking, and then I don't know what happened. It was like, it's just like, ugh. So
I think I tried night shaving one time, and I forgot to shave the other half of my face, and I didn't realize it until I was at work, and I was just like, oh, if I wasn't drunk, I'd be embarrassed, but.
Oh my God, stuff we do. Well,
yes.
So and not everybody still has this, so it's totally different for everybody, but when was the last time you thought about drinking? Or maybe it's a resentment or some trauma that popped up, but it's just one of those moments where it almost feels like some type of weird, limbic hijack, or just, you're just like, oh shit, I just got knocked off, the beam or whatever. When's the last time that happened to you? And like, what did you do specifically to kind of just get on the other side of it and not, use or drink?
Well, there's a couple things actually. Last week, actually, last Sunday, I went to a concert, and I went to Pussifer, James Maynard Keenan, and or Maynard James Keenan, and this guy was sitting, he came and sat next to me, and he was completely shit-faced. Like, I immediately smelled it, and he was in my space, and about halfway through the show, I want to say he passed out, and I'm like, it was kind of interesting because I was like, I remember those days, but then he came back with, I want to say it was wild turkey. I mean, the fact that I could actually, like, oh yeah, that's wild turkey. I can smell
Identify
it.
it by
And
smell. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And he just kept it high where I was constantly smelling it. And I was just like, oh God, this is starting to get to me. Because he had his aroma, his fragrance was a combination of beer and whiskey. And I was just like, wow, those are two of my go-tos.
Yeah.
I told him in the politest way possible to stay the fuck out of my zone. and and then he came back with the, like, I'm here for you, man, I'm here for you. And I'm like, don't be here for me,
Yeah.
be here for you over there.
Right.
And so the second that they're about to close the show, I was just out of there. I had to get out. I just needed some fresh air. But, like, it was one of those ones where I kind of rolled through it. Like, all right, what would have happened? I wouldn't have been able to get home. I would have stayed there. I probably wouldn't have gotten a fight. The usual tomfoolery of alcoholics. And then the other thing that actually happens now and again is it's the sound. Like, there will be movies, and they over accentuate the sound of, like, pouring shots, and that's just like, it just brings me back to the whole ceremony that I would have, like,
Yeah.
when I would go to a bar. Like, I was very particular about, like, where I would sit. I would want a wall, like, right here, and just that way, like, I could only focus on one person, and also I could see everyone walking in and out, and I have my escape path if I needed to go throw up. Like, it was just like, I planned everything out when I would go to a
Right.
bar. And it's the sound of those, like, the rocks glass getting stacked, like, those little moments kind of takes me back to it all. And it's then I play it through, and I'm just like, every time you said that you're throwing up, that you're working your abs, you actually weren't.
Isn't that crazy though? I think it's so weird how all those old neural pathways and networks and whatever, but like how my brain still lights up with certain things, smells,
Yeah,
noises,
yeah,
seeing people, drink on a patio on a beautiful summer day or in the springtime.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. I can feel it lighting up. If there were a brain scan going on, I would be like, oh shit, because it's so weird. But luckily we have that buffer of like, let
yeah.
me think this through. What is this going to look like? All that kind of thing. But some people are taken by surprise when that happens. And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter early on. Of course, it's probably going to happen a lot more, but I don't care if you have 10, 15, 20 years, like it's still going to happen.
Totally,
I think it
totally.
surprises people. So like, I like to be prepared for that, just knowing that it will happen. And what am I going to do, when it does? And like, even like Maynard James Keenan and like Tool, Perfect
Mhm.
Circle, Perry Farrell, Trent Reznor, like those are my boys. Like that's but I couldn't even listen to my music for like 2 or 3
Yeah,
years
yeah,
because it was so tightly wound up with my using and my drinking, and like it was the mood and the sounds and the emotions that it brought out. And I could not listen to Jane's Addiction like without drinking and doing drugs. And now I'm okay. But like some of that stuff, if I hear a certain song and I'm in a certain kind of mood, like I can't, it's so weird.
no, I just got done. I just saw Nine Inch Nails with Ministry and It's a Rap,
You're killing me.
and I actually met, like, one of the lead guitarists of Nine Inch Nails that night, and I'm just thinking, I cannot believe I'm not drinking. But also the fact that, like, I got a picture with the guitarist, and I'm like, that wouldn't have happened if I was drinking.
Oh
There's
no.
no way that would have
No.
happened. He would have been get away from me.
Yeah.
And so it's little things like that. Like I try to weigh, like I remember the show. There's no way that would have happened if I was drinking. And yeah, it's also I gotta take it to the I can't have one. I can't. It's just it's unfathomable to think. Like I watch people at dinner sometimes, like across the room, and I'm like, they're still sipping that one goddamn glass of wine. What is wrong with them?
They leave and there's still alcohol in the glass. And I'm
I,
like,
I, I know.
how
It's like,
dare you?
what is wrong with you?
That's so funny. I mean, it's like, but that's how you know, right? That obsession, that
Yeah,
checking and
oh,
making,
totally.
like, even when I'm around family or whatever, I kind of keep track of how many drinks they order. To this day, it's just something I pay attention to, and it's not my focus,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I definitely notice it, which is weird, And I mean, ugh, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, and like if I'm doing something, and I told somebody this recently, but I was at Red Rocks in Colorado. I was going to a concert, and it was just the most
Mhm.
gorgeous weather. And that venue is incredible. And I was walking in, and
Yeah.
I was probably 6 or 7 years sober at the time, and maybe 3 or 4 years, I don't remember. But I had this little bubbly feeling in my stomach, like, oh my God, I can't wait to get a beer and watch this show. And 2 seconds later was
Mhm.
like, I'm sober. But it was because my mind associated the anticipation, the party, the fun, the music. Like it how could you go do that without drinking or having some party favors? Like that seems unthinkable. But that's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
old
Absolutely.
wiring. It was so weird. And then 2 seconds later I was like, oh wait, what? I don't even drink anymore. What the fuck? What am I talking about? But that's the trickery that people get caught up in,
Totally.
when it's
Totally.
your own brain trying to like.
Mhm.
So, what do you do for fun now that you don't drink? Obviously, you go to shows. What
I
other?
like to go to concerts. I like, I, I'm a big movie dork. I like exploring, like, coffee. I feel like you have to be addicted to something when you're an addict
Oh
because
yeah,
it kind of goes with the word addict. It makes sense. I'm big into the gym. I'm big into CrossFit. I'm big into exploring uh, new coffee shops, and it's just weird. It's like I kind of pick a new hobby every weekend, where it's just like when I first got sober, I got big into like I want to challenge myself. It kind of goes with into that like intensity
yeah,
where it's just like I suddenly want to live as hard as possible all the things that I missed during my 30s. So like I went skydiving, and which I'm terrified of heights, and so I'm like, all right, I want to see if I can beat it. And then I was like, I'm going to take motorcycle lessons now, and then I did that for a couple days, and then I was warned never to get on a motorcycle again. And I'm like, okay, I did it, and I'm a terrified. I do not belong on a bike, but I tried. I tried,
you tried.
and then I got big into cooking. Like I just made like a few months ago. I made bao buns.
Oh yeah, is that Thai or Vietnamese? Vietnamese. No.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's Asian.
Yes. There you go. Those are delicious.
Yeah, they are. And mine would have been if I made the dough right, but it's a step in the right direction. I like cooking. It's another creative outlet for me. I don't know. I like trying new things. The thing that I try to live as much as possible in the present, and that was actually took me a long time to get a hold of. Like I I was constantly thinking ahead and not relishing that I'm alive and
Yeah.
missing out on everything that's happening around me instead of focusing. Or, for example, like concerts now, I rarely take out my phone. I don't record anything because I'm like, I'm missing the moment if I'm
Yeah.
recording it. I
Right.
want to experience it. That's that living in the moment is definitely one thing that it took me a long time to get a grasp on, but I think I've gotten a lot better at it. And then spending time with my son is just like, I got really big into, like, my tattoo is actually it's Marcus Aurelius with
Oh,
like some
wow.
and then this is the skull and a heart, and it's all about stoicism, philosophy.
That is beautiful.
And thank you. And one of his quotes was, "Imagine that today was the last day of your life, and then spend every moment after today living the most of your life as a bonus time." Like, and that's what I've tried to done, because I should have died so many times, and for some reason I'm still here. So I really I'm trying to live a richer, more colorful life,
Yeah.
even though I like to wear all black all the time.
Same. Always. But it's
Yeah,
funny.
well, that way I painted my office purple, so it's just
This is awesome. I love that. Well, it's cool too because when you're learning new things, you almost have to be more present than you would be otherwise because you're engaged,
totally,
right? You're not.
yeah,
And I think in my drinking life, I never wanted to do anything new because I just needed to be on autopilot so I could be semi drunk all the time, basically, or
totally,
now
totally.
you're learning, but also being around a kid, their eyes, they're looking at things and that they are
Hmm.
good at being in the present moment usually. So
Hmm.
that's a good thing. But I love the fact that you like to try new things and learn new things because I feel like I missed out on a lot too, when I was in my addiction. And speaking of the intensity part, like, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but you're really active, you're into CrossFit. I am as well. And a lot of people make fun of it all the time, which I totally get. But like, you know, it's a community, it's a mindset, it's just its own thing. And yes, there's a level of like intensity, but you've had some injuries and
Hmm.
you played rugby too. So like throughout your active stuff that you've done, you've had injuries. And I've heard so many horror stories. I've seen them up close and personal of relapse during injuries,
Yeah, yeah.
surgery, pain medication, this and that, and also just removing that outlet. And we were talking about this earlier, but like for me, I've got to have
Hmm.
that physical outlet. I have to have it for my anxiety, for my
Hmm.
mood, for my sleep. And you're, probably the same. So I guess I want to know, you know, what do you do when you can't use that outlet? How do you recalibrate to where you don't get just completely thrown off your, game, essentially, mentally and with your recovery and all that stuff?
As far as my mindset, whenever injury, or how do I deal with that? Actually, COVID was a perfect trial
Mhm.
because I panicked big time. Like, what am I going to do? And I got into yoga. It was terrifying. Men, there's something gross about men doing yoga. Like, I try to like make sure there's no reflective surfaces anywhere around me when I was doing it.
I've seen things. I've seen things in yoga classes, and I wish I would have just
Yeah,
all women.
that'll make you drink a lot. Like,
Oh, that's so funny.
but there's something like, as long as I'm doing something at an intense pace, like, the thing that I loved about yoga was the fact that, like, it was something new. I knew I was going to suck at it, and there was something about the humility of that I enjoyed. Like, I know I'm going to suck, but the thing is kind of like, I had this approach to things with that I kind of used the steps as how how I dealt with it. Like today, I'm never going to be as bad at this as I was today. And so like, no matter, as long as I'm moving in the right direction, that's all I care about. Am I better than I was yesterday? Cool. Just got to keep that up.
I love that. I love that. That's huge. That's huge because, that being able to pivot and to shift and like, yeah, totally. COVID was absolutely, it was like, oh my God, my gym is closed. I can't do this. I can't do that. What about my meetings? I completely freaked out because it was like, and we know that isolation is not a good thing for us. Like that is not healthy.
Yeah.
And so I was, but like you said, it's like, you have to start trying all these new different things, which is, I don't know. I find it like enlightening and I like it. I love having that beginner's mind. I will say though that my ego kind of hates not knowing what I'm doing. But once I settle into just being a student, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I know more about some things than these people and they know more about this than I do and whatever. We're supposed to teach each other stuff,
I try to imagine like it's that first time I walked into like recovery and it was like my second day and I'm like, I just go back there and I'm like, I got through that. I'll get through this.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
There's something about the fact that like, I say this without ego. Don't bet against me. Like I do not bet against someone in recovery because there's something about the fact that like, once you've lost everything and can come back from that, do you really, you're really going to doubt that person? And so I kind of enjoy being the new person who's learning because the thing is like, I'm betting on myself.
Yeah.
And there's something cool about that.
It's powerful. I just felt like this surge of badass when you said that because it's true. There's literally, anytime I'm struggling with something, I remind myself, you overcame the hardest. Like you will never go through anything like that again. That was that hard, that challenged you to change on every single level of your life, including how you actually think. So don't doubt yourself. Don't think. And when people come for me, I'm like, okay, you want to, if that's what you want to do, good luck.
Yeah.
But without ego, right? It's also like, obviously I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm not great at everything, but I am always willing to like try really hard, and I think I'd rather do that and suck at something than to, doubt myself or live in fear or hide or whatever, all the stuff I used to do when I was in recovery or in my addiction. So speaking of, one of the reasons I started this podcast is because people get sober so many different ways, and it's so cool. And there's there's 12-step programs, there's Recovery Dharma, there's so many cool things now, and I love that. But what are your thoughts on like a higher power, if any, and like what does that look like in your day-to-day life? Because this is a huge challenge for a lot of people who come into recovery.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
So many different reasons. Especially I've noticed younger people coming in now, who are kind of new, and it just, some of the language can be antiquated, or even just the God concept at all, because people assume that means religion, this, that, and the other. So what has that looked like for you in terms of like higher power stuff and how you deal with that?
That was definitely a hard one for me. For me, growing up, I always felt like religion was weaponized. It was used as guilt trips. It was used as, why aren't you paying attention? Or it felt like, especially where we grew up in Lake Jackson, I always felt like I would look around and it seemed like no one was paying attention to whatever the priest was saying. It was more like, who's here? What are they wearing? Where are they sitting? And it's just like everything except for like the whole point of the mass. And and it just, that stayed with me. And myself, I'm constantly questioning things. so the God thing put me off because, like, as myself, like, I'm an atheist, and much to my parents' chagrin,
Yeah.
but but it's just I have my reasons, and that's it.
Yeah.
So whenever I have whenever they were talking about a higher power, I'm like, and to pray, like, I had a hard time praying because I felt like anytime anyone prayed, it was like they were praying to Santa. It's just like, I need this, I want this, and I'm like, I felt like I didn't deserve to do that because I'm asking for something, and what have I done in return? I don't believe in you.
Right. Right.
So who am I praying to? And so what I did was I just kind of put it out there. I prayed to the universe, and
Yeah.
I felt that was more about God. I have some random thoughts about or weird thoughts. I kind of felt like there is like this God thing is like in all of us. So the thing is, just by me putting it out there, I'm actually talking to the universe.
Yeah.
So when I prayed for the first time, just saying, I struggled with the first step. That's why I didn't get sober the first time in recovery, because I felt like I was still in control.
Yeah.
And so the second time I went into recovery, I focused very intensely on the first step. So I prayed, I put it out there. I'm like, I can't do this on my own. I need help. And so just the fact that I said it out loud and meant it, it's what I tell people. I finally experienced what I call a gift of desperation.
Yeah.
Where I was willing to do anything to get sober, even pray.
I love that because it's so open. It's just so open. And I think that like, that was my experience as well. As my sponsor was like, look, as long as you're not it, we can start there. Like, you're not God, right? Yeah. Cool. Yes. Yeah. Deal. And then the other thing was, this first thought wrong type of deal, right? Of like, whatever your ideas are or what your thoughts are, let's just go get a second opinion, right? And for me, I pray and worship the moon and the streams and the trees and the animals, and like I feel so connected to whatever all this is when I'm in those elements, or I see somebody randomly be nice to somebody and it makes me cry, and I'm like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, we're all interconnected, right? Like stardust. I don't know.
Yes.
But this first thought wrong feeling of like, I had to admit that my life was a mess, and that it was my thinking and my ideas and my coping skills that had kind of gotten me where I started. And so I needed to just, am I willing to go ask for a second opinion, whether that's praying about it, writing about it, working a step, talking to a sponsor, sharing about it in a meeting, like talking to a therapist, whatever. There's so much. Just don't be in charge of your own universe. Like defer to someone with more time, And so for me,
get out of your head.
Yeah, I had to gently, the whole pray word really kind of freaked me out. But to your point, I just,
totally.
And now I don't really pray. I just say thank you a lot. I just say thank you constantly to like the ether, because everything feels so arbitrary to me. My choices should have killed me. And you have perfectly good 5-year-old right now fighting leukemia or whatever. So like, to me, none of that makes sense. And so when somebody says God saved me, or I'm here for, I have a hard time with all that, because it just feels,
I agree.
It feels arbitrary. No, I don't deserve to be here any more than anybody else does. Right. So I really, really struggle with that when people say, God saved me, or got me sober. I think it's a part of it. It's a huge part of it. I understand the spirituality aspect and getting out of self and all that kind of stuff. But also, you got to show up. You got to get to meetings. You got to work steps. You have to be of service to other people. Like it's the pragmatic piece that keeps me sober. Like, let's not get too
Totally. It's also I hate it when we close with the Lord's Prayer, and I'm like,
It kills me.
fuck, seriously?
We do that every Thursday night in our women's meeting, and I'm like, this is so this is literally not what it says in the, it's very confusing. But, and for the first few years, I wouldn't say it. I would stay silent during the prayer because I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not at church. I'm in an AA meeting. But now.
I still do it. I'm still silent. I'm like, I try to think of like different song lyrics, and there is something hilarious about speaking the lyrics to sober at the end of a AA meeting.
The Tool song?
Yes.
I'm going to try to do that next time. Yeah, because my sponsor, she's very her higher power is definitely female, and it's very goddessy and university and like all this stuff. And so we both are just looking at each other every Thursday night like, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. But it's like, but it works for some people, and I get it, right? As long as it's not weaponized and used in these kind of ways, like you said, right? Crowd control and guilt and shame and all this. I mean, that is not what I needed when I came in. I needed the opposite.
No. Right? And that's not what religion is supposed to be, in my opinion.
Same.
I hate it.
So do you ever find...
Russell Brand, that'll be my...
Oh yeah, yes, I love him. I love his books.
So do I.
What do you ever? And I know the answer is yes. I already know, but do you ever find your intellect trying to kind of hijack your program? Right, because
yes,
intelligence is dangerous. It can be very, very dangerous because this thing doesn't run on logic, right? So, what? Do you experience that, and how do you kind of call bullshit on yourself, I guess, whenever that's happening?
How do I call bullshit?
Yeah. How do you
say things out loud.
Yeah.
I say things out loud. I talk through things. If I stay in my head too much, the creativity and the intellect, I can convince myself of anything. And I did it for years, so I know that for a fact. And if I notice that I'm starting to spiral, if I notice that my thoughts are getting a little too intense, and I know where that leads, and it's kind of like doom scrolling in your head, without the phone. It's just like you start to take yourself down the rabbit hole of just things, and it's like I can feel the momentum building, so I just start talking out loud. I don't care if I sound crazy, but it's just I'm like, okay, do I really think that? Why do I think that? I kind of just walk through things. There's something about actually saying things out loud, and suddenly they lose its power.
Absolutely. And it's so many times when something's been eating my lunch for 2 weeks straight, and then I'll say it out loud in a meeting, and I'm like, oh my God. Or I'll write it. I'll reread my journal or look at my night.
Yeah, write it down.
Or run it by, your friend or sponsor or whoever. And it's asking those questions of, do I actually believe this? Or, because a lot of it is that I have a very worst case scenario mind. I can quickly just go from here to just straight down, and you just fall through the hole, and it's, but sometimes it's hard to get out of that if you're going through a depressive state, depending on moods and what's going on in life and all that kind of stuff, so it's easy in theory to talk about I'm just good. But sometimes if you're in it, it can be really hard to recognize unless you're surrounded by people who are like, are you okay? Right.
Well, the thing is also, it's I know I'm obsessive about things. I mean, it's just if anyone heard me saying that, they're like, no shit. But the thing is I am a worst case person. But the thing is, since I've gotten sober, what I've turned that into, I've tried to evolve that into, okay, what happens? what happens if the worst case happens?
Right.
So I always have a backup plan. And the thing is, there's some comfort in that, knowing that you're not going to surprise me. I'm like, oh, so this is going to happen? Like, okay, I'm going to lose my job tomorrow. What are you going to do now? Well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I've already planned it through.
You have a plan.
And I think it's kind of like that, having, what I've tried to do is it's the same thing with the program. It's like having that backup plan. Okay, I need to go out tonight to a bar. There's a work meeting at a bar. I'm like, okay, I need to have my backup plan. How am I going to get out? What's my escape scenario? Yeah. I try to apply that logic to everything. So it's like I always leave at least 40 minutes early to a meeting, because I plan for traffic. I plan for something to happen. And it's just a very like OCD addict way of trying, like the Boy Scout method of always being prepared.
It's important though. It really
it keeps me sane.
Yeah. And I've done, fear inventories and that, where it's similar, where, I had a sponsor one time have me list out my biggest fears of like, oh my God, if this happened, my life would be over type of stuff, like catastrophic. And then column of what would happen if I were drinking? What is my addict brain telling me would happen? And then kind of what's the reality of what would happen in a clear-minded, clear-eyed, recovery thinking state of mind, right? If I lose my job, I'm not going to go to a bar and find drugs. I'm going to go start reaching out to my network. And, the old me, yes, my fear is based on what the old me would have done. It's not looking at what I would actually do in reality. And so that, it's just really weird how that stuff, even when I'm going through those things and I'm logically like, this is not real at all, but I lean toward fear. I lean toward negativity. I kind of lean toward suspicion, and I have to pull myself back and stay out of it. But it can be hard.
It's totally hard, especially like when, for me, like I'm an empath and I like feel people, and it's like, I'm like, and I can tell like they're hiding something or they're acting different. Like I can tell their mannerisms are different. And I'm just like, I try to stop reading people and I can't. And so that just plays into your head and like, where is that going to lead to? And it's exhausting. It is.
It is exhausting. What advice would you, because there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are either like really, really new in recovery, or maybe they're coming off of a relapse, or a lot of people who really are still drinking and using, and they're just kind of kicking the tires on what a sober life might look like. What advice did you get early on that really helped you?
One thing, I pulled this out. This is my big book. And did you treat yours like a yearbook?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got all these like signatures,
phone numbers.
There's a couple things. Yes. 13th step things.
You don't say.
My favorite thing was, I've given up all hope for a better past. That one was just amazing. Like I still use that as a mantra. Like, because there's, especially when you're early in recovery, you keep going back to like, things for me, for example, my incident with my son. I can't change that.
Yeah.
It's impossible to change it. It happened. But it helped solidify the foundation of my recovery.
Yeah.
And all of my mistakes led me to here. And the thing is like, what can you can either spend all of your time thinking about all the awful things that you did, or you can use that as fuel to do something better.
Right.
And I think that's really important. Is because I feel like as an addict, you it's so dangerous to just get wrapped up in everything that's behind you instead of looking forward.
That is so powerful. That's huge. And it feels insurmountable. And what a lot of people do want to do is, because the step work, unfortunately, we do have to work through that stuff. We've got to go back and look at things. We've got to work through those resentments. We have to see where we really hurt people, and that's painful. And we can either use it to be like, oh, wow, I'm really a piece of shit and spiral and relapse, or, okay, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. How can I make changes? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. But I think, wow, that's huge, giving up hope on a different past, because the past too is, to me, where a lot of resentments come from, and this person shouldn't have done that, and my childhood should have, and this, and it's like it's staying stuck in the problem instead of being like, okay, here we are. What's the solution? Right. I love that.
And also the thing, when I was in my second treatment center, what I got hung up on, or not hung up on, what I focused my energy on was, I guess it's the writer in me, but I'm just like, right now is the first page of my comeback story. How am I going to write it? And the thing is, what's amazing is everyone has a chance to write their own. It's just like every day is a new chapter. It's just like, but you just have to start writing it. But the thing is, it can be incredible, and that's exciting.
It can be whatever you want it to be. And that's the question. And it's hard to see that in the beginning. It really is. Because,
Oh, totally.
I use the Shawshank Redemption line all the time of like, you're going to have to swim through a river of shit first. It's going to be rough.
Yes.
And it's going to be work. And then you get to the other side, and Andy Dufresne is standing in the rain. And it's just like, yes, that's what that is. Right. But to your point, and for me, the moments, the times, the memories of all of the most shameful things, the most embarrassing things, the things that I swore I would take to my grave, those are the things now that are the most powerful when I'm working with other women. Like that shit is what helps people, because if I'm willing to say that, it just helps us to like, not normalize, but like, when my sponsor said some stuff and shared her story, it helped me with my shame. It made me feel seen and accepted. And these are things that I swore I would literally go to the grave with. And I'm out here telling people, 100 people when you share your story, and it's weird, but it's like, transmuting that shame into power because you're using it to help people. And also I own it. I have to own it. And,
and that's you are absolutely, you're making it powerful, because there's something amazing about what happens during a meeting where you have all this anxiety about what you've done. You think it's the worst thing on earth. And then when you share it, people start laughing because they're like, that's it. And it's amazing how that weight falls off your shoulder. It's just like, oh my God, like number one, you found your tribe.
Yes.
But number two, it's just like, you don't have to carry it anymore.
Right. Right. And it's funny because we all have that terminal uniqueness that we come in with, but also like, I thought my fifth step was going to be the most scandalous thing this woman had ever heard. And she was just like, meh, and I'm like a little offended, like, damn, I thought I had some good adventures.
Of course.
Just like, you're pretty boring. But it's such a great feeling. Yeah. You found your people, but also, oh, good. I'm not the worst person in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
So a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up here. But has therapy been part of your journey? I'm always curious if people did that or not, because some people do, some people don't. And I just wonder what your experience has been.
Yeah. There's, for me, I think it goes with just like I'm in my head a lot, and I do therapy. Like I talk to a guy like once a month, and it's to make sure that I don't get too comfortable in my head.
Yeah.
Like I kind of force myself. I don't like talking about myself at all. I always prompt the therapist, just like, you have to ask me questions, because I I need it. I'll answer anything, but you have to ask it.
Yeah.
And it's just to make sure that I don't spend too much time in my head.
Yeah.
Because that's a dangerous place for me.
I love that. And I love having a different perspective than just a sponsor, like just someone in recovery. I like to have someone else that I can share confidentially with who can, weigh in or so I love that. And it's helpful.
Yeah.
I think it really is. So what, I guess this will be the last question.
Mm-hmm.
But what is your favorite thing about sobriety?
I no longer am scared when a cop's behind me.
Oh, God, yes. I
There's that.
don't you want them to pull over sometimes and just be like,
Oh, yeah. I'm like, come on.
search my car, smell my breath, I'll do a field sobriety test. Like, I am clean as a whistle. I'm like a Girl Scout over here now. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
No, it's that, and it's like, I no longer have any fear. I had so much anxiety about like showing up to work the next day smelling like alcohol.
Yeah.
Like I had, I would bring a change of clothes with me to work sometimes because I was worried I was going to sweat and it was going to smell like vodka. There was just like the sweating thing and knowing that I was going to reek like of Jaeger or whatever. And it was paralyzing. And now it's just like, I crack up. I'm like, there's going to be a Christmas party. I'm like, can we show up at 8:30 tomorrow, please? Like I'm like, no, we'll show up at 7. I'll be ready. I'll drive everyone home tonight. Like, there's something about the fact that knowing that I'm always capable of showing up.
Yeah.
And I love that.
A lot of peace of mind with that. It's a really good feeling. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I cannot thank you enough. Were you going to show me something or was that?
I'm going to share this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I wrote this thing. I took it upon myself to write this goodbye letter to alcohol when I was in treatment, and I actually submitted it and it got published in a paper. So
that is awesome.
I'll read it to you.
Amazing.
It's called Farewell. I can remember the moment like it was yesterday. It was a holiday party. I was sitting in the corner of the living room. Music was playing. People were carrying on, laughing as they tried to recall details of an anecdote. I sat back and just took it all in. I was gazing upon a living, breathing Norman Rockwell painting. Then something magical happened. I saw you. You were standing by the old breakfast table, the one always missing that extra leaf. A group was huddled around you, laughing, anxiously awaiting your next amusing tale. You were the life of the party, and there was no doubt about it. I was yours from that day forward. It took me a while to find the courage to meet you, but when we were together, the connection was like no other. You gave me confidence. I was a better version of myself. I fit in. Finally, I was the man I knew I could be. Whatever was mine was yours. In my eyes, you gave me so much. You made me happier than I've ever been. I remember wanting to take you everywhere. And much to the chagrin of others, I did. They didn't understand our chemistry. They couldn't understand we were made to be together. At least, that's what I thought. We had been together for so many years, I don't know what changed. What used to be a relationship built on compromise had festered into an abusive nightmare. No matter how much my life I devoted, it wasn't enough. My job, my family, my everything. Whatever you asked of me was yours. I loved you. But then I accepted the inevitable. You never cared. We never existed. I never mattered. So in parting, my darling alcohol, you're nothing but a dirty whore. And this life of mine is yours no more.
I was starting to cry. Then, of course, you ended with a little humor. Wow. That's the relationship.
That is the relationship.
There was an old timer in my
But
original home group in Houston, and he said, if you're a real alcoholic, never forget that your mind has a contract out on your ass. And I was like, damn, because it's like thing we're talking, and it's not alcoholism, it's alcoholism. So like but all of these, the complexities of that relationship and how it turns on you at some point, but by then it's
yeah,
way too late.
yeah,
It's way too late, right? At that point. That was beautiful.
yeah. Thank you. No, there's definitely a sudden shift when it's not a party. It's
like you're a prisoner at that point.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And also thank you for your courage to share your story. And
Of course.
Really nice to see you.
It's my pleasure.
After all these years. So
after 5 years. Yeah.
I know, right? We're still so young. Oh.